Welcome, guys. And now we are going to look at Kasparov's 10th game. This game, Kasparov was black, and it was played against Vasily Smyslov. Both are from Russia, and this game was played in the final match of the candidates round 12 at Moscow, Russia, in March April 1984. The defense which Kasparov used is the Tarrasch defense classical variation. Uh, then let's go fast through the opening. D4, D5, knight F3, C5, C4, E6, CD5, ED5, G3, knight F6, bishop G2, bishop e7, castle shot, knight c3, knight c6, bishop g5, c takes d4, knight takes d4, and h6. This is the main line of the Tarrasch defense. The invading bishop is driven back, and both sides can develop strategies for the middle game. Bishop e3, rook e8, and a3. This was relatively new approach at that time. The idea is that white's queen can go to b3, then duck back to a2 if attacked by a black's knight at a5, bishop e6. Sometimes the bishop goes to g4, a more active position. However, white can play h3 and drive it back. Uh, In each of the four games that feature the opening during this match, Kasparov chose to put the bishop at e6 immediately. Indeed, his score on 1 win and 3 draws in the Tarrasch was in large part responsible for his victory. He also defended against a3 in the semi-final match. Knight takes e6, and now f takes e6. Black's pawn structure with 3 pawn islands against white's 2 is a bit inferior, but there are no other problems in the position, and the pawn at e6 is safe as long as the e file stays closed. White should therefore adopt a strategy of opening up the center and exposing the weakness of the pawn. Queen a4. The queen has to be developed so that a rook can come to d1. King h8. Black's king is safer here than g8 because there are no sacrificial tricks at d5 to worry about. Rook a d1, rook c8, king h1. The point of this king move is not additional safety, but rather to be able to retreat the bishop to g1 after playing f4. A similar strategy was used in the second game of the match. a6. This seems to weaken a6. This seems to weaken the queen side and doesn't even threaten b5 because the a pawn would be lost. Yet Kasparov saw that the b pawn would be later be able to advance under the right circumstances. f4, knight a5. There is no reason to play knight g4 now that the bishop can retreat to g1. Kasparov keeps the focus on the queen side. The knight controls c4 and b3, both potentially important squares. It can come to c4 and put pressure on many dark squares. By the way, it also means that pawn at a6 is shielded, so that black will be able to play b5. After all, f5. It is easy to understand why Smyslov, aware of Kasparov's growing queenside initiative, would want to turn the attention back to kingside. But the correct plan was to meet the flank attack with a central action. Smyslov should have tried to arrange to get the e pawn to e4 instead. Here instead of f5, bishop d4 was correct, and after knight c4 would then be met by queen b3, and if black tries bishop c5, then white can play e4 here. So instead white plays here f5 and b5, queen h4, now the queen has transferred to the king's side. There seems to be some possibility of starting an attack. Kasparov responds with an excellent defensive move, knight g8. The discovered attack against the queen drives her away, while the pawn at h6 is given additional support. Black can defend g7 by moving the bishop to f6. Queen h3. This was not the final word on the opening variation. Queen g4 was tried as an improvement the following year. And now knight c4, bishop c1, bishop g5, f takes e6, and now bishop takes c1, rook takes c1. White hopes to do something with the f7 square. Rook takes c1. Here instead of rook takes c1, rook takes d5 doesn't work, because there is queen b6, and after rook takes c1 there is knight takes b2, where the knight will return to the c4 and capture the pawn at a3 and head to e3. Knight e3. Now knight takes d5. Knight takes f1. Rook takes f1 and rook f8. Knight takes d5 here. If at all the rook is moved, there is knight f6, bishop f3, knight takes d5, knight takes f1, rook takes f1 and rook f8. These exchanges favor black because white's pawns are weak. Fortunately, the knight on g8 defends e7. It is really the hero of the game. Now knight f4. This is a critical error. Bishop e4 would have been much better. The bishop can then retreat to d3 or advance to f5 in support of the e-pawn. Kasparov believed that the game would be about even if this had been played. So here instead of knight f4, bishop e4 was the good move. And knight e7, queen g4, faced once again with the question of where to put the queen on the king side, Smyslov makes an error. It had to go to a more active post like h5. But Smyslov wanted to push the h pawn to h4 on the next move. Here queen h5, rook f6, h4 would have been best, though the position after queen d4 surely favors black. It is too late for bishop e4 because black hits the bishop and the b pawn with queen d4. So Smyslov after the queen g4, g5, this would have not worked with the queen at h5 because the h pawn would be under attack. It kicks away the knight, opening up the f file. Queen h3. This only postpones the necessary retreat. If knight is taken, then there is this, and after this there is bishop 4. After this is this. So now rook f6, knight d3, rook takes f1 check, bishop takes f1, king g7, queen g4, queen d5 check. This is a powerful centralizing move, and blocking with the bishop allows us to checks on the back rank. e4, and now queen d4, queen d4. The queen remains in the center, giving her the flexibility to retreat to f6 or sneak into white's camp by queen e3. Now h4, rook f8. There are 3 open files, and only black has a rook to use. Bishop e2, queen e3. Now the pawn at g5 has a second defender. King g2, knight g6, h5. It would have been better to capture at g5. Knight e7, b4. White is running out of moves. King h7, king h2, rook d8, e5, rook takes d3, bishop takes d3, queen takes d3. The 2 pawns that provide compensation for the king won't live long, and the white queen is paralyzed. And here resignation was the correct decision. Guys, I think you would have enjoyed the game, guys. I'll meet you with the next 11th game from Kasparov. Thank you all.